Let's talk about taking feedback as a founder. It's something that you're going to have to deal with at one point or another, whether you really want to or not. So, good to have some kind of basic understanding so you can navigate it a bit more effectively. So, first and foremost, have an open mind and be actively listening. I talk to so many founders and witness it when I go to these pitch events where they give off the impression that while they're actively being spoken to, whether it's by someone in the crowd they're networking with, a judge that's giving them critical feedback, a random community organizer, they're giving off a close-minded, I know more, I've experienced more, I'm 25, but yet somehow I'm going to speak to an executive, not because they're older, but because they've exited 17 startups that look just like mine. I'm going to talk to them like they don't know what they're talking about, even if they're asking me some really basic questions. I see it all the time, and it's embarrassing every single time. Taking feedback is very much an exercise in, I don't know, poise, in skill, in, social fluency. It's really an EQ test more than anything. There's IQ that goes into it, of course, with what decisions do you make and how do you kind of course, navigate it effectively. But EQ here, in terms of like the emotional quotient, so how good you are socially, really comes into play because there are plenty of people that receive horrible feedback and they take it like a champ and they win tons of points. And there are tons of people that get just a little bit of feedback and they start crying immediately. And I don't mean literally, I mean they're angry, they're flustered, they're defensive, they're rude. And it's like all of those things don't sound investable or supportable or encouraging to me. So when we look at this big other piece, separate yourself from your startup. So many founders take feedback personally when, of course, judges can be rude. Some judges are rude intentionally. That's something that they don't tell you in startup school. There are judges, little pro tip, that will absolutely ding you on nothing. Meaning they will find something that's actually good and they'll just hit you with a little hammer verbally in front of everybody and be like, I don't really believe in that. Or I don't really know why you get that estimate. And it's not because the estimate's weird or because your claim is kind of, otherworldly. It's because they want to see how do you handle it? How do you deal with the pressure? How do you manage through an awkward situation? Because I've also seen founders that do not manage it well. And what does that investor do? They twist the knife. They make you look silly and foolish and like you can't manage yourself and you can't manage your team. And guess what? Those things, unfortunately, in this scenario, become true. So what I want you to remember is one thing and one thing only. It's the cheesiest, corniest, you've seen it in 1,000 movies line. It's just business. Meaning when they criticize you, look at the business. Meaning if they tell you that you're a bad founder and you don't know how to speak and you can't do this, it'd be like, okay, well, what of that can I learn? What if that is true? What if that isn't true? What if that's relevant to me? What if that, regardless of how they told me, if I took the feedback, would actually help me? Do I have to like them because they gave me the feedback in a rude way? Absolutely not. People are rude and, they tell with them. But if the information is good, I want that. I want that for me selfishly because I want for you to improve your business. So separate that. Understand that when they're critical of you, if you feel your face get hot, if you feel those emotions flare, go, all right, what if they weren't talking about me? What if they were talking about some random character in a book that I had no emotional connection with, or I was reading this story, or I heard this story, or heard this criticism if I was in the crowd? What would I say to that founder? What does that founder look like to me? Do I think that they don't know this or they don't know that or they give off this impression? How can I assess? And that gets right to our kind of last point, which is assess and prioritize feedback. Not all feedback is good feedback, not even in the sense that it's not all going to be positive. I mean, some is just bad. Some is just wrong. Some's just inappropriate. Some's not stage specific. Some people sound incredibly confident giving feedback that they absolutely have no right to. So what I want you to do, a little mental image that I like when it comes to taking feedback, when it comes to assessing, it's a baseball analogy. So if you know baseball, there's a catcher. Their job is to catch the ball and then return it to the pitcher. So the idea is when a catcher catches the ball, they don't catch it right at their chest. They stick their hand out. That way the ball, hits their glove. Then they bring it to the chest and they throw it back to the pitcher. So the idea is very simple. When someone throws feedback at you, catch it. Don't dismiss it. Don't ignore it. Don't drop the ball. Don't turn away. Catch it. Assess it. Go, is this feedback relevant? Is this right? Is this wrong? Is this additive? Is this detractive? You're not always going to know, but the act of asking the question, of weighing good, bad, indifferent, and then determining, is this feedback I should take and keep with me? Is this feedback that I should toss? It's a bad ball. Or is this feedback that I toss back because, hey, I have a different point. I have a question. I have a correction. You have to deliver things properly and nicely and tactfully and all these things, which we'll talk about more later. But taking a minute to really think and really understand and really, again, pull yourself out of the startup and look at the feedback for what it is can move mountains for you, because you're going to learn quicker, you're going to progress quicker, and you're going to look like an absolute warrior when you do it. Because while you're being criticized and judged and doing all these things, people are going to see, oh, they just keep getting better. And you know what better means? Investable.